Hello, and welcome back to Emerge Stronger. Today, we are talking about emotional dumping versus emotional stability. Which one are you doing? And so, I have a question for the listeners. When was the last time you walked away from a conversation feeling drained, either because you overshared or because someone unloaded on you and you had no idea what to do? Today, I'm joined by my co host, Melody. Melody, hello, and welcome to the conversation.
Hey there.
All right, so let's talk about this emotional dumping, and let's talk about what the difference is between healthy vulnerability. Like I call you up and I'm like, hey, can I talk to you about something? And I share with you versus I call you and I just unload, and maybe I call you repeatedly. And after we get off the phone, then I text you. And then after I text you, I email you. So let's talk about what the difference is.
Yeah. So when you're vulnerable, everything has its place. When you're vulnerable, I think it's, maybe you're going to this person for advice. You're sharing some of the things that you've been through. And I'm all for wise counsel, like going to somebody that's going to be able to actually give you godly, wise counsel, maybe somebody that has been through what you're going through. I've often told people, if you are having financial struggles and you need financial wisdom, you don't go to people that have filed bankruptcy or in bankruptcy, right? Because they don't know either, with the only exception being Dave Ramsey, because I think he was pretty close to bankruptcy at one point, but he's not there anymore. Anyway, so he learned whatever the recipe was to overcome that. But you want to go to somebody that's going to actually be able to speak into your life. And there is a place for a person to express, like when we do coaching calls, people normally come on there, their emotions are heightened because of whatever experiences they had that week, and they're ready to share with you. But emotional dumping is really when you are overwhelmed emotionally and you constantly maybe go to one or two people and the conversation is only about you, and you rehash things over and over and over and over again. And maybe this person doesn't have the wisdom, hasn't been in your shoes, and they don't want you to hurt and they want to be there for you, but sometimes it can be detrimental to that relationship. I recently had a client come on, and she was a new client, and she said, I asked her, why did she decide to do coaching? And she's like, well, I know that I have some issues in my life that I need to address. And in times past, I have relied on my oldest starter, and I would have these moments where I was overwhelmed, from past trauma or whatever, and things I hadn't addressed. And she said, my daughter said, you emotionally dump on me. You kind of take it out on me, or you just have all these things, you're emotionally overwhelmed and kind of emotionally flooding is what she's describing. And her daughter actually ended up saying, Mom, I think you need to go to somebody that can help you with this, because what it's doing is deteriorating our relationship. I am letting your calls go to voicemail instead of picking up. I'm trying to communicate with you via text. I try to avoid going to your house, and it's not because I don't love you or I don't want to be there for you, but I don't know how to help you. And your emotions are so heightened all the time that there's no space for us to talk about my life, or us to just have fun together, or, because you're always so emotionally overwhelmed with things. And so that's kind of a little bit of the difference. One, I would say, is you're seeking true advice. And again, I don't want to say that you can't call somebody. Like if you called me and said, hey, I just need a vent, I'd be like, okay, let's go for it, and, or vice versa. I feel like I could do that to you too. But if you're staying in that place and you're not addressing the issue, that's a problem.
Yeah. So I think that was really good. And it made it, I think that we all could think of people in our past or maybe even currently that do that emotional type of dumping. But what about, let's say that we have a friend group, and let's say that I emotionally dump to you, and you kind of tell me like, hey Sonia, like you really need to find somebody else, like you need to seek therapy or go find a coach or something like that. But then I go to another mutual friend and I do that same thing to her, and then I move on to another friend. And I've seen this in church groups. And so like at what point I feel as though those type of people, it's like they can't get help for themselves so necessarily, so they're just going to jump from person to person to person to person rather than going to seek therapy or a coach.
Yeah, and again, I believe that we all need to have those people in our lives that are going to be there and support us and all that and listen. And there's times when you are the mentor and times when you're the mentee in relationships, and nothing is wrong with that. But how I see somebody that's an emotional dumper is you're repeating the story over and over again, not taking any sound advice. You're just staying in the same place
Hmm.
and not learning to move forward. And what you do, this actually, what you described happened in a small group that I wasn't in the small group, but the person that was in the small group told me that she was being kind of left out, over time. At first, they were all good friends and all that kind of stuff. And over time, she just kind of got pushed out of the group, which shouldn't happen. Somebody should have stood up and said, hey, look, you're making this group about you. You take things wrong. You're overly defensive. And she is that way. So she's overly defensive about things. And that's problematic in relationships. But they should have set up, especially if they're a Christian group. But at the end of the day, the hard truth is that she was pushing them away.
Hmm.
So not only did she come to go to them with their problems, if they said, something, she would get defensive, or, what part did you play? And she just got overly defensive about it and took everything personally, and then essentially ruined the relationships that she had in that small group.
Mm. Yeah, that's tough.
And that's where
Okay,
church hurt
so
comes in. She actually left that church.
that's tough. I have some feelings about that church hurt. And I think I actually sent you something not too long ago about that. And I think that it's, people want to label it as church hurt,
Mm.
but they're placing like the building, the church itself, as an entire whole that hurt them when maybe it was one person or a couple people that hurt them. But
Mhm.
now it's the entire church that hurt me.
Mhm.
There's, and I don't know how big your church is, but maybe there's other
Yeah.
small groups that she can go
Yeah.
to. But anyway, I digress.
Yeah.
Different topic.
Yeah, that reminds me of a quote by Zig Ziglar. He would say, if somebody would say, "Oh, I don't go to church because there's nothing but hypocrites in church," and he would say to them, "Well, you should come on down because we have room for one more." Because that's the truth. I mean, we're
That's
all
true.
hypocritical.
That's right. That's right. Okay, so I think that this is a really good like way to speak to both parties. So let's say that I'm the person that is just like, oh my gosh, I can't take any more emotional dumping. What should I do? How should I address that?
What I would say is, what are you doing? Because when, oh, they can't take it. So that's
Yeah,
what
like I'm tired of this emotional dumping that this person is doing on me.
yeah,
And I'm the one that's like voicemail, send a voicemail, not
yeah,
responding to text. Like I'm
yeah.
just avoiding it now.
Yeah. So I would say you got to set boundaries. I think you have to address it and just say, listen, I'm here to support you. But if you're not taking, and you speak the truth in love, if you're not
Yeah.
taking steps to actually move forward and learn and heal and all of that, then the weight becomes too heavy for me to bear. Cause then I feel like I'm bearing your weight for you. And that's too much. It's like if you have a headache, take something for it, drink some water, do something to resolve it. And if you're not doing anything and you keep saying, I have a headache, eventually my empathy runs out because you're not doing anything to fix it. So
Mhm.
I think the person, and that's a hard conversation because there are
Yeah.
some personality types that are averse to conflict, and that is conflict. You're risking the other person feeling rejected or then maybe getting defensive or not being your friend anymore. But we are not helping each other if we're not telling each other the truth. So I would say the person that is receiving the emotional dumping is going to have to redirect the person and say, you should be journaling, you should be praying, you should be exercising, you should get a coach. You need to be doing all of these things. You need to have more faith in the Lord. You need to let the Lord fight the battle, those types of things. And I've had those people in my life. And although sometimes it was like, oh, dang it. That's not what I wanted to hear. I wanted to hear that I was right and they were wrong and, all that kind of thing
Mhm.
was exactly what I needed to hear. in order to get me moving forward. So you have to set boundaries. You cannot solve their problems. You did not
Hmm.
get them into this mess. You will not get them out of this mess. And of course, other than that, you pray. You pray for the
Yeah.
person as much as you can, but you have to set the boundaries.
Yeah. I remember when I was, oh gosh, probably in my early 20s, and my mom would call me and complain about my dad. And it was just, I don't know, once a month. It's
Mhm.
like, but it wasn't the first time I had heard it, but it was just like, oh, she's old enough now. Now I can talk to her and now I can emotionally dump on her. And again, I'm setting the stage here because I was also in my early 20s. Knowing what I know now, I wouldn't have said the things that I had said. But I do remember telling her, and I'm like, well, it sounds like he's not going to change. It sounds like you're not going to change. So you might as well just get a divorce because I don't know what else to tell you. Because, you're not getting help. You're not solving your problems. And that was truly my thought and my feelings at that time, because it was a way for me to just like, how can I shut her up? How can
Yeah.
I get her to stop calling me? Like, I
Yeah.
don't want to hear this anymore. And then, maybe she would have called my sister or whatever. Like I was saying, just one jumping from person to person. And I get it. She was frustrated and she just needed somebody to talk to. But I think there is a point where you have to take that accountability for yourself. And what am I going to do to get help?
Mhm.
Rather than emotionally dump on my friends and my family.
Mhm.
So I think that's why it's important to talk to an unbiased third party, somebody
Yeah.
that's not emotionally invested into those relationships,
Mhm.
because there's definitely bias going on there.
Yeah. I think that's a good point, especially like with you saying it's kind of like you in the middle of your mom and dad. It almost puts you in a position where you're forced to choose. And that's not really a position that you should be in, both your mom and your dad. I know you were just using it as an example and all of
Yeah.
that, but it is true. Like putting you in the middle, like I always feel like the parent should be there for the child and not require the child to emotionally support them. Um, and there's some crossover. There might be some of that, but you just don't want to put your children in a position where they're bearing your emotional burden, especially if it's with their parent, like with their other parent, because then they feel like they have to choose, and that's not a good idea at all.
Yeah. So the person that's doing the emotional dumping, and maybe somebody is listening and they recognize that, wow, that sounds like me. I probably shouldn't be doing that to my friends. What are some things that they can look for or do to reframe?
Mhm. So in terms of what they do is they learn to manage their own emotions. They learn to regulate their own emotions. And again, we have tools that we can teach you that will be very beneficial. The thing that you have to keep in mind though is that when you're emotionally dumping, what you're looking for is relief. And when you are emotionally dumping on a person, again, it almost shifts that burden from you to them, because maybe they feel like they have to solve it. Maybe they feel overwhelmed from carrying it. And we always look for the path of least resistance when we're in pain. We just want to get rid of it. We don't want to think about it. And that's why people drink and do all the things that they do. Emotionally dump is another path of least resistance. And so we always want to do that. But you have to realize I have to do the right things, find the thing that kind of works for you. For me, it was journaling. Exercise is another good one for me. Finding a hobby, investing in other people, take your mind off of it. Now, taking your mind off of it doesn't necessarily mean that you ignore the issue. There are times when you sit with that pain and you ask the Lord, show me what I'm doing that I shouldn't be doing, or what am I not doing that I should be doing? Like, help
Mhm.
me resolve this. Help me learn to regulate my emotions. Help me cast my burden on you, because your yoke is easy and burden is light. But if I cast mine, you handle that. And so that's what God's way of refining us in our spiritual. That's why we focus a lot on the spiritual aspect, because our problems come from that spiritual, like that void that we need to feel. And we try to fill it with everything else except God. And when we fill it with God, it doesn't necessarily mean the problem automatically goes away, but we're centering our focus on God, and we're trusting our heart with him so that he can heal all of those broken things. So whatever the thing is for you, meditation, prayer, journaling, exercise, investing in people, whatever, do that. Now it's not going to give you that fast relief like alcohol or drugs or emotional dumping would do. It is a muscle that you actually have to work out. For me, though, I do feel like every time I would journal, it was like I felt the pressure leave. Every time I would exercise, I'd feel the pressure of the situation leave. And a lot of that has to do with like the chemicals in your brain readjusting. You
Mhm.
moving from the fear response of the fear part of the brain to the creative part of the brain, that it takes steps to get there. But eventually, like if you use that as a practice instead of alienating your friends, because that's or family, because that's exactly what's going to happen, it will feel so much better, and you'll have more confidence in yourself. You'll feel better about yourself. Your self-esteem won't be as low because you're putting into practice things that actually can build your self-confidence, that can make you a better human to the rest of the world.
Yeah. I remember several years ago having a client that was very high anxiety. And this is when I was taking on quite a few calls a day. And she would either call me or text me. And I have a fire. I need to talk right now. Can you get me in today? And I'm like, I'm sorry, I can't. I'm booked today. And well, what about tomorrow? What time? First thing in the morning? Like you could just sense the anxiousness in her text. And then I wouldn't respond for several hours because I was in sessions. By the end of the day, I would finally get to respond and I would say something like, okay, I have an opening at such and such time tomorrow. By that time, so much time had passed, she was over it.
Yeah.
She was like, I'm good.
Yeah.
And so I think that's like, number one, you've got to recognize that the sense of urgency that you feel in this moment is not going to have that same sense of urgency if you can just relax and breathe and do the things that you're saying. Journal, pray, meditate, go on a walk, like maybe just sit with it for a little while. That sense of urgency then releases.
Yeah. My coach used to always tell me that there's no emergencies in relationships. And I wouldn't say that's 100% true, but I think it's mostly true. I would say 95% of the time it's true. It's just, it feels like an emergency to us, right?
Mhm,
And
mhm.
because we have high anxiety or we're stressed and all that. And it's funny because when I get to that place of high anxiety, when I do the right things, I, I feel better about the situation. When I dump on somebody else, I just feel worse because it's like I use that time unwisely. I could have
Mhm.
better used it investing in the Lord or in other people or journaling or whatever. And those are the things that actually make me feel better. But because we want the path of least resistance, that's why we do the things that we do. And sometimes just waiting, because how you feel about it, like especially if I've had a bad day or whatever, but I mean, you don't really ever have a bad day. Every day that you're alive is a good day. We can be grateful for that. But if I feel like I've had a bad day, I tell myself I'm going to eat right and I'm going to sleep good. In the morning, I'm going to get up and I'm going to exercise, read my Bible, and I'm going to feel so much better. And I always do. There's never a day that I was like, oh man, I wish I wouldn't have read my Bible or exercise because that didn't work. There's not never once have I done that.
Yeah. Yeah. I think it's important for the person that finds themselves in high anxiety and feels as though I just need to, emotionally dump because that makes me feel better. You need to ask yourself, am I sharing to connect or am I sharing to be saved?
That's good.
And if you're sharing to be saved, then, nobody's coming to save you. You have got to save yourself because here's the other thing. The person that's emotionally dumping, and I have one person in mind, I'm obviously not going to say who, but that does this quite frequently. It's like, and you say the same thing to them over and over again, but they come to you with the same problem or they bring up something from the past. And it's like, well, nothing changes if nothing changes. I
Absolutely.
can't make that decision for you. You have to decide that you don't want to live like this anymore. You have to decide that you want something better for yourself. You have to decide that you want to change.
Yeah. I think so many times people think that you're just waiting randomly for something to happen in your life to change it. There's
Mhm.
just waiting and waiting and waiting. And you're 100% right. Like your life isn't going to change unless you take a step to be different. And I think, like, let's just talk about a college education. Like when you're going to college, you're going to one class at a time. and you do so many classes a semester, but every class that you go to, every paper that you write, every equation that you work out, you are one step closer to being who you want to be, which is the college graduate. It's the same way personally. You're not going to jump from point A to point Z in a day. Like, very rarely do you have these huge miracle things that happen in your life that completely turn everything around. I'm like literally sitting here trying to think of, has that ever happened to me where just some miracle happened?
Well, it makes me think of what you've said before in previous episodes where you were like, David, you don't love her, you love me. And it's like, well, did he just magically say, you know what, Melody, you're right. I don't love her. I love
Never.
you. And like, yeah, it just never happens that
No.
way. And again, it's not in our timing, it's in God's timing. And
Yeah.
so there was a reason that God had you sit there.
Yeah.
There's a reason that the Lord is having you sit where you're sitting right now. But you've got to open yourself up to receive and like fully surrender everything to the Lord, but also receive his guidance.
And you said earlier, there's nobody coming to save you. And that's true, because this is even how I feel about healing emotionally, that you have to play a part in it, because God won't even heal you unless you let him do it.
Mm-hmm.
And letting him do it means you have to surrender.
Yeah.
And that surrender, it's like all of us wrestle with God, just like Jacob did. All of
Mhm.
us. And in that wrestling that he had with God, yes, he was wounded. He had a limp for the rest of his life, but he also got the blessing. And so there's
Mhm.
something to be said about wrestling with those emotions, learning to surrender. And I know it's not easy. I mean, there's been things where I felt like I really needed to surrender, and I was like, okay, here you go. Oh, okay, here you go. Oh, pull
Yeah.
back, over and over and over again. But that wrestling is good. Sitting with that pain is good if you're going to do something about it. If you're going to do
Yeah.
something positive about it, because you can do something about it in very negative ways, but you could do something positive about it. But you're right. Even God, salvation is a free gift, but you have to accept it. Like, it's
Yeah.
just given to you. You do have to accept it.
Yeah. I think that's like, and it brings a client to mind. And I think even as coaches, we get to the point to where we're like, if you want to pay me to emotionally dump, well, I don't even want to say fine, then pay me, because that's not what I want for you, because we want to help you move forward. But it's like at some point in time, you have the tools that you need.
Mhm.
We've given you the wisdom, the guidance, the steps, all of the things, and we're here to support you and walk alongside you to help you move forward.
Mhm.
But it's up to you. We can't do the work for you. So
Right.
you've been given every single tool in the toolbox, but it is your choice. You're choosing not to use those tools.
Right.
And at that point, there's nothing that we can do. I think that sometimes people come to us some come to us that are ready to be helped, and some come to us for that emotional dumping.
Yeah.
That they're not ready to change. They're not
Mhm.
ready to do the work. They just want
Mhm.
to vent.
Right. And like you said, it's not like we're going to say, oh, we're not going to be here for you. We'll be here for you. But really, as a coach, we want you to get to a place where, from a coaching perspective, we want you to get to a place where you don't need us, that you put all the
Yeah.
tools into practice and your life is better. We had somebody, and I don't even remember what the post was about, but there was a lady that came on and said she maybe it was on YouTube, I don't know, but she was like, she stood for her marriage, she did all the work, but they ended up divorcing anyway. And she said, but I feel so much better. Like, I feel, not because of the divorce, but because she was implying that the work that she had done had been great. And I posted on there, the work always works.
Mm-hmm.
You can't guarantee a certain outcome, especially if it's a marriage and there's crisis or whatever. But you can know that if you are doing the work every day, you're going to get a little better and a little better. And some days you have better days than other days and all of that. And then when you do that, when you're doing the work, you don't feel the need to emotionally dump. You are more present to be available for other people, to mentor other people. Your life, I think this one client, I love her so much, and her marriage did actually end in divorce, and he ended up marrying the person he had an affair with. but her life is thriving. I mean, she's helping homeless kids. She's,
Mm,
really involved in her church. And she's hilarious for one, like just completely funny. But her life is just so great. I'm not saying perfect, like her life
yeah.
isn't perfect. And if she could snap her fingers, she would say, I wish that marriage would have worked out for my kids and, all that kind of thing. But she said, I refuse to be a victim in this. I'm going to thrive in my life regardless of what's happening. And I just love her so much. She's really an inspiration to people.
Yeah.
I'm going to have her on the podcast one day.
Oh, I would love that. It reminds me, I heard something the other day is, are you a survivor or are you a thriver?
Mhm.
And you can definitely like see the people that are just choosing to survive. And
Yeah.
it's like, this is my life. These are the cards I've been dealt. Woe is me, versus the person you're describing. She's thriving.
Yeah.
She had a divorce. She tried to save her marriage, but she's choosing to live her life differently and live it in a positive manner, maybe living it for the Lord. So you have a choice in the matter. You really do.
Yeah. So to save your relationships, stop emotionally dumping. It's okay to be vulnerable. It's okay to seek wise counsel. It's okay to even vent sometimes, but you want to do it to the right person. You don't want to
Mhm.
put your family in a position where they ignore your calls or avoid you or feel like they have to choose between parents or other siblings or whatever. You don't want to put them in a position like that. Your friends, the same thing. You don't want to have to put them in a position where they choose one friend over the other. If you're venting about another friend or something like that, like go to somebody that is not emotionally attached. That's the thing, and can
Mhm.
see, because when you're emotionally attached to a situation, you always have a bias. And
Yeah.
our friends and family always want us to not hurt. They love
Yeah.
us. They don't want us to hurt. And so sometimes they will give you advice on what they would do instead of what you should do. That's another reason why it's good to go to a coach, but you don't want to alienate your family. You don't want to alienate your friends. Again, it's okay to sometimes vent a little bit, or have somebody there to support you, but you can definitely even unintentionally misuse that relationship. So go to somebody that actually can give you sound counsel on what you need to do.
Yeah. I mean, I'll even say, even as a marriage coach, that I have a really hard time when family members come to me for advice. I just do. I can't give you, I can,
Yeah.
but there's a bias there. Like the relationship's different.
Yeah. In fact, when my son was kind of going through a hard spell, I sent him to somebody else. I was like,
Yeah,
I don't, because my mama side is going to trump my coach side.
absolutely. Absolutely. Yeah. Hey, we're human.
Yeah, definitely.
All right, awesome. Well, this has been a great conversation. Thank you so much for joining us today. And if you would like to reach out to us, please find us at itsnotover.net. If you're interested in what you can do to save your marriage today, please go to our website and download our free guide, How to Save Your Marriage When Your Spouse Has Emotionally Checked Out. Thank you so much, and we'll see you next week.
Bye.